Adoption, the Uncensored Truth. I'm Geraldine Teggelove, and I'm actually feeling very honored today to be hosting this very first podcast. This podcast series is the creation of Barbara Hayward, an Australian who now lives in New Zealand. And why am I hosting this podcast? Well, when we were chatting, it's many moons ago, about this fabulous idea that Barb had about interviewing those amazing survivors and thrivers of not only the lost generation, but also those who've gone through the heart-wrenching experience of being forced to adopt out their babies. I quietly asked Barb if I could be the one to introduce this lovely lady to the airwaves, and she said yes. Barbara has been a friend and colleague of mine for many years, and her story will certainly help you understand what adoption, the uncensored truth, is all about. She's certainly one who has had first-hand experience with all the heartaches of trying to find her lost child. Barbara really walks the talk and is now an advocate for all who are attempting to make sense of their journey through the ups and downs of searching for that someone who may never be found. So Barb, thank you for allowing me to be the host on this very first show.
Oh, thank you, Geraldine. It's just an absolute pleasure. You're the one that keeps me straight.
Oh, well, I'm glad to hear that, because I'm not sure how many people can you keep you straight, Barb, but that's a good thing.
It is.
So do you want to start with explaining to the listeners, what is your adoption story?
Well, I was 16 and found myself pregnant. And the boy, my boyfriend at the time, Gary, and I decided that we wanted to get married. Okay, I was 16 and he was nearly 19. And we knew we were young, but we also knew that we were able to do it with help and support. And so we told my parents this particular night. It was quite funny. I was a marching girl at the time, and it was at the beginning of the season or at some stage, and we were getting uniforms measured. And we'd had our uniforms measured 2 weeks ago, and this was the last measuring before it was sewn completely. And the seamstress said to the chaperone and to me, "Barb, you've put on weight. I don't know what to do. If you put on any more weight, the uniform won't fit you. Are you okay?" And I said, yeah, I'm just getting, just eat a lot. And I went away and I said to Gary, we're going to have to do this. So we spoke to my parents, and then we went to speak to his. And his parents can be quite volatile, and my parents are quite passive aggressive. And so when we were telling them that, they were really good. What do you want to do? Why do you want to do it? You're going to have to get a better job. You'll have to go into the Air Force and all that. And anyway, they said, leave it with us and we'll contact your parents and we'll get a time to talk. So I came home from marching on Saturday, and Mum said that they had rung and they're coming at 2 o'clock, and it's just like yesterday. And anyway, they came right on 2. Gary got there 1:45, and so they started to go into the lounge, and we started going to the lounge. And his mother said for us not to come, that it had nothing to do with us, that the decisions had already been made, and they were just going to tell my parents what was going on. And we'll call you when we're ready. So we were summoned in after, quite a bit of shouting the other side of the closed door. And she said to me, "Barbara, don't sit down." She said, "We're not going to be here long enough. What I want you to do tomorrow is resign from your job, because we've got plans for you. Now, Gary is going to pick you up at 6 o'clock tomorrow night. Make sure that you are ready. And I've already made the appointment with the doctor, and he's going to see you and check you over. He's already started the adoption to get that together. So you'll be going into a girls' unwed married home, and that's where you'll stay until you have the baby, and the baby's organised to be adopted out. And that was it. That was it.
Oh my goodness, Barb.
And Gary and I were just dumbfounded. It had nothing to do with us. And then, just to make it really good, my mother said, and if you think you're going to run away and get married, we're going to charge Gary with statutory rape.
Okay, so that was really...
Yeah, so that was it. And the Saturday I was in the home, and I stayed there until after the baby was born, and it was just... I was all alone, and it was awful. The place was good, but the girls were good, but it was just and there was one time there that I used to come home on a Saturday for a few hours. This particular Saturday I came home, and Dad and Carol, my sister, were arguing, and I stepped in, and my father belted me. And so he was basically trying to kill the baby. And so I chose not to go home after that until the baby was born. I did see Gary on a Thursday night for 1 hour, and he was able to pick me up and take me back, but not stay with me on a Saturday. When I was going into hospital, I had no one except at a place called Keedish in Kew. It's not there anymore. We had friends of Keedish, and this lady would pick us up and take us into Queen Vic Hospital for our checkup. So when I was due, I was 4 days late, and they took me in, and they were going to bring the baby on. So that's what they did. And it was the 30th of January, 1970. He was born at 8:30. I was 16. I was on my own. I was very unfamiliar place. And all I know and all I heard was, as the nurse got the baby and she was walking out, before she walked out the other side of the door, she said, "It's a boy." That's it. That was it. I did not hold the baby. I did not see the baby. It was just horrendous.
And this must have happened to many young...
So many.
Yes.
And I had no idea about anything. I was 16. I look at my grandchildren now, but when I got home from the hospital, my mother said to me, don't think you're going to sit around home and mope. After all you've done is had a baby. Now you get a job and go to work and put it behind you. And that, as an obedient girl at that time, that's exactly what I did. Yeah. I got a job the next day. I started a week later, didn't look back. And in those days, there was no counselling, no nothing.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, I had molestation when I was a young one, and I'd been raped at 12, but I didn't think they'd mattered, and they didn't have the same effect. And what I realised later was that moment that Brett Charles, who I called him, was taken away, I broke. Yeah. It's like getting a watch and a hammer, and it's forever at whatever time. And I was forever 16.
Yes.
And so the other piece of advice I got from my mother is that I had to hold on to Gary now, because I was used goods and no man would ever want me as a wife. And so I did love Gary, and so we eventually got married, and we had 2 more boys. And then we divorced, of course, because with everything we did, we had this white elephant. We couldn't talk about it because we were taught to be ashamed. We were taught to be humiliated. I was a tramp. I was a whore. I was a slut, all the other things. And Gary didn't cop it because he was the male. And that marriage was never going to survive because it was too traumatic. However, in that time of being married, I had 2 miscarriages. I had my then now middle son, Harley, and then I had 3 miscarriages. And my father said to me one day, because he was mostly drunk, and he said, you know, you've got such an attitude and a chip on your shoulder. If you don't get rid of it, you'll never hold a baby and do the pregnancy. So these were all the messages I was getting. And so what happened after that is I had many breakdowns, nervous breakdowns. I tried to commit suicide many times. And I was just told that one of the pieces of advice I was told is from their mother-in-laws when I was in a psychiatric hospital is get yourself out of the gutter because you're taking my son down with you. And so there was nothing in there that reinforced anything of me as a human being or a person who had value of any sort. And so life, when I had Harley, it was really interesting because I used to lock all the house up, doors, windows, when I bathed Harley, because I thought for several years that somebody was going to come and take him. Why would I keep him? Why would I be allowed to? Because my first one was taken.
Yeah. So, Barb, within all of this, and I know there is so much more to this story too, which I'm sure will unfold as your
yes, it will
go on. Did you ever go looking for this baby?
I did. And I had a friend, Pixie, and she'd had a baby in forced adoption. And we decided to go look together. And so we went to the organisation and we did the mediation and the other things. And she got wonderful result and she met her daughter. And I got a letter from his mother stating that he has no interest in meeting me ever. And if he ever did, he will contact me. Please don't do this again. And so that was another shattering. And one of the things that I did with my 2 boys that I raised was Brett Charles was always mentioned in the family. So they knew all about him. And so they eventually went looking for him as well. But and because I was feeling so guilty and so everything that's negative, I made a contract with myself never to look for him again. Because the response was so final. And
so what happened from there, Barb?
Well, funnily enough, on the 8th of April, 9 years ago, which was like yesterday, I found out later, the next day, that he had been trying to look for me. And he went to an organisation in Melbourne, and they wrote a letter on the 8th of April, 9 years ago, to my ex-husband. Because as I say, often women change their names a few times, but the man always kept his surname. And so through that, I was able to make connection. It took a while. It took a few months for us to communicate together because we had an intermediary that we would go through. And he was 43. And can I tell you, at 8:30 on the 30th of January, Friday morning, 1970, he was born. And the first time I heard his voice was Melbourne Cup night, 2014.
Oh, wow.
He
Yes.
was 43 and a half, nearly 44, and so it took me nearly 44 years to hear his voice.
Yes.
However, that's a blessing because so many mums didn't.
Yes,
And
absolutely.
so, yeah, and
so are you still in communication with him, Barb?
yes, we are. He sent me a lovely little birthday message yesterday. The whole family has met, and they're all full brothers and, you know, nephews and what have you. So it's chugging along.
Well, I guess
and it's there, you know, 9 years. I can reach out to him, he can reach out to me. And we now live in different countries, and we do have that contact, which is really lovely.
Yes.
Really lovely. And I'm doubly blessed because it's something that I prayed for but believed would never happen.
Yeah, well, that is amazing, Barb. Yeah. So in all of this, your podcast now that you've decided to create and begin, what's behind that? What are you hoping to achieve with this?
Okay, so when Brett Charles first contacted me, I started crying on the 9th at 4:15 Perth time, and I actually stopped crying in December because it was so built up. Nobody could talk to me. It was just so confusing. And my daughter-in-law, I was visiting New Zealand, where I'm living now. My daughter-in-law said to me, "Is it now time to get some counselling?" And so when I went back to Perth, I got attached to this lady, Gina, and she only counselled birth mothers and adopted children. That's all she did, because it's such a it's such an area that is so on its own. And I haven't put that very well, but I can't find the word. And what she did is she allowed me to talk and say things, and then she came back as a bit of an educator.
Yeah.
And it was just after the time that Australia got their official apology for relinquishing mothers, or we're not relinquishing, of course, they were taken. And she asked me if I knew about it, and I didn't. And she said who was there, because I was 16, I was underage. I shouldn't have been able to sign those contracts. Who was with me? Who was my advocate? And of course, I didn't have one, because what happened is I was so broken that I didn't want to know anything about anything, because I was really running away. And that started an education lesson for me. So when I went back to Melbourne, I rang up an agency called Vanish, and they put me onto a place called Arms. And they have support meetings. And it just so happened that afternoon that Joe rang me in the morning, that they were holding a meeting. And it was in the Old Queen Vic building, which had mostly been pulled away, but the main part was there. And she said to me, it was really strange, like, I'm 43. I know what I can do. I don't get lost. And she said, when you get there, if you can't come in, phone me and I'll come and get you. And I'm thinking, what's that about? I'm old enough, you know, I can walk around the corner. And you know, I put my first foot on the ramp to go around the back, and it was only, let's say, 50 yards, if that, and I couldn't do it. I burst into tears. It was just so overwhelming, the whole thing. Anyway, I did eventually. It took me 7 minutes to get there. And I went
Yeah.
up and I said, "Oh, Joe, I had trouble getting on there." She said, "Oh, Barb, you had your baby at Queen Vic, didn't you?" And I said, "Yes, I did." She said, "Every mother, birth mother that's had the baby there has had exactly the same reaction. It is that deep, the pain." I had no idea. And so that was the beginning of my journey.
So these podcasts then will be just absolutely fantastic, I presume, at helping other women who have been through this to actually be brave enough, perhaps, and courageous enough to step into that journey back into really living life again.
Yeah, finding themselves or coming home to self. And if I had no idea that even the laws had changed, how many other hundreds of thousands of women don't know? And I'm not a silly woman, you know, I'm quite intelligent, but I had no idea. I had no idea. So I lived this lie, not knowing there was a truth. And I really don't want others to do that. Okay, they may have lived like that for decades, but they don't have to anymore. I don't want them to. We want to investigate in the podcast people from other countries. What's happening with their governments? How is their laws changing to help them? So that it's an informative place. I had no idea about ambiguous loss and disenfranchised grief. I had no idea that even existed. And when I found out about it, I cried again because it made sense of everything. And I remember talking to you a few years ago, and I think I was 64, and you said to me, "You know, Barb, you're really doing great with your healing, and you're going to find inner peace." And I remember saying to you, "No, Geraldine, I have tried all these years and I'm going to die without inner peace. I can accept that now. I can accept that." And you said, "Oh, no, well, I know more than you, Geraldine. As you know, I keep saying that." And a while later, I was doing a live stream for Facebook, and I was talking about the adoption and what have you. And then something happened, and there was an understanding or a realization. And I thought, "Oh, I'll investigate that later because I can't talk and do other things." And when I look back at it, what it was is I still had memory of the past, but I didn't have the pain of the past.
Wow.
And what I realized, what I was experiencing was inner peace. Now, how I got there, I don't know, but with knowledge, I want to break the lying circle. I want to break the illusion that the stigma that's been put on us right across the world, no matter what color you are. And if I didn't know something, there is somebody else there that doesn't know it as well, and they deserve to know it.
And I guess too, Barb, from what I'm hearing from you is that this is also going to offer a voice to other women who can be a guest on your program and
absolutely
offer them that space to voice their story and how they've worked through it. And sometimes all we need is to hear someone else's story and go, "Well, that happened to me." And this is how this, and if this woman can come through the other side and can make a go of things again, or can be at peace with everything that's happened, then maybe I can too. So it's a wonderful opportunity.
Thank you. And that's what we want, is people, women, and adopted children too. This is not, I would love a birth father to come on as well as a guest, because this affects everybody. And it wasn't until I read the apology from the Australian government, that I understood at long last what had happened to my first husband, the father of my children, and how it broke him too, because he was spending time on trying to heal me. I didn't have the wherewithal to know that he was doing it bad too. And so that's when I learned this is on not only one side, but it's more for birth mothers. I understand that. But we want to hear the good and the not so good. And we want to know, you know, the rejection from the children to the parent. And, you know, from the adopted, I've got a guest coming up, and she's an adopted person, lady, and she's going to tell her story of her adoptive family, her looking for her mum and finding this new family, and how it affected her kids. And so this is a platform to express and to learn that we are so incredible, because the ones that are still here that survived have such strength, and that strength of survival is their voice. And I just want people like me, who honestly didn't want to give up their baby, and they were too young or whatever the circumstances, to say, you know what, I am valuable.
Yes.
I am still the mother of that child. She has everything of me in them.
Yes.
And to be proud of who we are, but also to stand up tall with our story. And I'm sorry if it offends people, but you know, this is real life.
Yes, absolutely.
This is real life. And we hear so much about the adoption and the adoptive parents, and now it's our turn.
Absolutely.
It's our turn.
Barbara, this has been an absolute pleasure. And I know that these podcasts are going to bring so much hope and love and understanding and a voice to so many people. But how can listeners get in touch with you, and where can they find these podcasts?
Right. The first one, I have an email address, all one word, adoption, the uncensored truth @gmail.com. And I will say that I'm not tech savvy yet. I've just turned 69, so give me a little bit to get up to speed, and then I'll have it underneath, and I'll have all sorts of others. But at the moment, it's adoption, the uncensored truth @gmail.com. And what was the other question?
So the email address is for people to get in touch with you, or if they
give a comment, or yes, that's right. And so the first place, well, there's two first places I'm putting it up, and it's going to be YouTube, which is going to be the visual, and on iTunes, and that's going to be the audio, and they'll be put up tomorrow. But this is of no consequence, because next Friday, the 15th, at 2:00, they will be released.
Oh, thank you.
And there will be one a week. And if I have more information and I need to put it out, we'll have more. But we won't have less. And I'm hoping to have, there's just a lovely lady who is a psychologist, and I'd like her on to talk about the inner turmoil, things like that, just so that the people know that everything they're experiencing is real.
Yes, that is fantastic, Barb.
Thank you.
Well, you've heard from the lady herself. You know now that what I said in the introduction, she certainly walks the talk, and it is just a fabulous opportunity for anyone out there who is looking for that support or that place to voice their story, or maybe how they came through it, just advice to get in touch with Barb. And remember, I've got it here, adoption, the uncensored truth @gmail.com. And Barb, I want to thank you so much for honoring me with this introduction. It's just been fabulous and I've enjoyed myself so much. So thank you.
Thank you. And I'll see everybody next week.
Yes, absolutely.
And I'll be taking Geraldine's place in being the interviewer, which I'm looking forward to. So thank you very much, Geraldine, and thank you all. And please like and subscribe to this channel. You know how it works. We've all got to say that. And there is a disclaimer that I need to tell you about, but I will put that up in the next interview. I need to write it out. And then I'll find out technology about how to put it up on the screen, one step at a time, because that's what we have to do these days, is the disclaimer. And for all of you out there who have walked the path that I have, whether it's tougher or easier, don't measure your path by others. Just know that your path has been walked by others. They survived, some didn't, but you are still alive, still surviving, and your voice is important. You are important. So thank you, Geraldine.
Thank you.